Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jared. This is my channel, Mazda B3K. And in this episode, we're finally doing it. After mentioning it countless times and saying I'm going to do it, we're finally doing it. We're replacing this very worn out soft top on my 1995 Mazda MX-5 Miata NA generation. Let's get started. So this should be the second top this Miata's had based on the tags I was looking at. I think it was put in 15 years ago, and it's done. There's a hole under there. There's a hole under here. There are pinholes developing all through here. She's done. Time for a new one. So the way I'm going to be doing this is a frame off replacement, meaning we're actually going to lift the entire metal frame off the vehicle and we'll lay it out over here. There's going to be some stuff we got to do to fully get it off, start putting the new one on. That's how we're going to do it. There are some folks out there that they will do it frame on, meaning the metal frame stays on. I don't actually know how the heck they do it, but somehow they do. And there you go. This will be specific for the NA generation Miatas. I've never worked around an NB or beyond, so don't know if it applies. Anyway, let's dig in. Okay, just let you guys know, I took the driver's seat out and probably the passenger seat out too for filming purposes, so I have a place to put my tripod. You should not need to do that. You should just be able to fold the seats forward and slide them forward, and you'll be good. So first thing that we're going to want to do is we need to expose the bracketry that's actually holding in back half of our top and our rain rail, and what we need to get this whole thing loose, and that's going to be these guys. Oh, you guys can't even see that. These guys here. Let's see if we can zoom in. There we go. And you're going to need a trim tool like this one to get those out. These are, some people call them Christmas trees, some people call them push pins. They've got a bunch of different names, but we need to basically get in there and get them out. And doing a quick count, we have, may actually need to replace these. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, maybe an 11. Yeah, 11, 12. There's a total of 12 of these that need to come out. So we're going to do that. And that should expose a metal bracket behind it that we're going to need to remove. Okay, I took the carpet out. That's an additional 1, 2, 3, I guess it's 4 and 5 Christmas trees, but I got that out of the way, and that gives you nice, easy access to what's going on here. So you can see there's a string of 10 millimeters. There are, should be one buried back there. Yeah. There's 1, 2, 3 and 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and then 13 is buried back there. So there are 13 10 millimeters. They're all going to need to come off. We need to get this rail off. Depending on if you had bad leaks or whatnot, this could be pretty nasty, and you may need to hit it with a wire wheel and then paint it before you put it back on. I'm going to give mine some love. As you can see, I've got some issues. It's not great, but nor is it terrible. But we're going to need to do that. And then I've got some other stuff to remove. Now I'm missing some of my 10 millimeters, and it's because somebody's been in here before. This is the second top. Should be pretty easy to replace. But now, you can see, rail comes right out. So you got your side, you got your middle, and we have other side right there. Okay, and then that lets us get into this right here. So all of this is to actually get into the rain rail. That's what we're trying to do. Oy, yummy. Anyway, get all this loose. Oh yeah, there were rivets there. They ain't there no more. So whoever did this, probably an at-home job. They didn't replace that. Yep. All right, well, see all that. What all that does is now you can actually pull the top of the fabric off of those posts. That's what that's all for. All right, we'll move on to the next step. Next thing we need to do is we need to get this piece of plastic trim out of here, and there's a couple of things we got to do in order to do that. Let's try to get our seatbelt cover off. There we go. We have to get this big guy out of here. And once he's out of there and we can get the belt out of the way, other stuff to do. I'm gonna go figure out what size that is. Looks like it's 17 millimeter. There we go. I keep seeing signs that somebody else definitely was in here when they did the last top replacement. I've got some bolts that appear to be missing. I have to see what I can do to replace those. I don't like stuff missing, because the bottom line is manufacturers, you know, they don't put extra things in there. They count every penny. Oh, forgot. So I'll swing you over here. In order to get this out clean, there is a, whoop, sorry about that. Get you zoomed in. See this little tab here? This actually pops out like that. And then what that lets us do is just kind of slip this whole thing out. I just knocked a washer loose that I need to go recover. Yeah. So, is there a way? Yeah. I'm gonna hold this up to the camera so I know how the stack went. There's a washer that went right there. So that way I can just go ahead and slide all that off. Take this bolt out. Not have to worry about stuff disappearing. All right, let me grab that little washer and we'll keep moving. Here's the washer, and I can tell you it's not steel, it's probably aluminum because my magnet tool couldn't grab it. Okay, next up we need to pop this little guide out, and now we're kind of getting to the point where things start to come off. We need to get the roll bar off. That's going to be another big, does look like a 17. Yep, another big 17. Go. That just comes out. Put that there for my records. And that lets that come out. Okay, so coming around. All right, coming around, we need to get this push pin out. We also need to remove this. That's probably 10 millimeter. This, we can use our trim tool. What you want to do is get the little May have to use a pick on this, but get this inside out first. All right, kind of get that popped out, and then it'll just come out. And I just hit my head. That was amazing. Okay. Let's see here. Is that a 10? Yeah. I think Mazda like doing stuff with 10 millimeters. So we get this out. Now everything I'm doing here, of course, you will need to repeat on the other side of the vehicle, right? And I don't think I have it in frame. I may have to just kind of sling you over. There's supposed to be a bolt here, and obviously it is missing. Yeah, it's another one of those little nipple bolts that we just pulled, because it's on the passenger side, just looking at it. But you got to get that out too. And we need to get this little plastic clip off. So to do that, we've got a Phillips here. It's got to come out. Okay, correction. This is metal, not plastic. Once you get all that out, then spin you around. You can start to pull your weather stripping out. You don't need to pull it all the way out. Just kind of get it back so that way it's free of our plastic trim piece here. Which at this point, this trim piece, as you can see, let me zoom you out. This trim piece is pretty much ready to come out. There might be one fastener I missed somewhere, so let me go look. The answer there is no, I didn't miss any. So the last thing you need to do is take your seatbelt, feed it through, and we're out. Let's stick this over here. Okay, we had to do all that because we need to have good access into our frame. And actually, we did all that because that gets us access to the 3 bolts that hold the actual frame, the collapsible, convertible top frame to the car. So now we can do that. Make sure you do everything I just did to the other side of the vehicle. Having to give you the shot from across the way, but these are the 3 bolts that actually hold the frame on. They're 12 millimeters. And whoever did this last actually tightened them decently. So get these guys out of here. Do it on both sides. Oh, hey, cool. I was looking for this. This is one of the missing nuts for the rain rail. I'm hoping I can find the rest whenever I get all this apart and actually get the frame out. In any case, one more. Uh-oh, that's not good. I'm glad they made that in such a way that that's not a problem. Get my magnet tool, resist the urge to make it worse. Okay, something really important here. You'll notice I've got this side of the frame out a little bit, right? But the unit doesn't want to go, and it doesn't want to go because I have not pulled the rain rail off. That's what this black plastic thing is. It's double layered, and you have to get it off the bolts in order for the whole unit to come out nice and easy, and I did not do that. So I'm going to do it now. This is your actual top, right? So you could also open the rain rail and pull the top out, and that should also work. It's going to come down to whether or not your rain rail's in decent shape and whether or not your new top came with or without a rain rail. There are both options. So I'm going to get this separated and then inspect the rain rail and see what I'm working with. I imagine it's the original one and it's probably in pretty rough shape. Let's see what we can do here. So get your hand over here. Hang on, wait. In this spot. Okay. Let's try again and lift. Oh, this isn't heavy at all.
Oh.
And put it down here. Like so.
You're welcome.
With that, Miata's top is now off.
I'm way inside the bag.
Alright. So now that we've got that out of the way, I'm happy to see that a lot of our missing nuts are just sitting here. They were just wrapped up, I guess, under the folds at the top. And here is the rain rail. That's what this guy is. And it can be removed, as you can see. And I will be removing it. I think the top I bought was pretty nice. So I believe it's going to come with a new rain rail. But if not, you can try to recycle your old one if it's not in terrible shape. So I'm going to clean all this up. This is also a good opportunity, if you've not done it, clean your rain rail. See, this one's completely jammed over here. Not rain rails, your rain drains. So when it rains, these holes here are where the water is supposed to go, and then it goes down through the frame and it'll, it'll drop under the vehicle. But if it's clogged, that doesn't happen, and water winds up sitting here and it leaks into the cabin and you get wet spots, or it might leak into the trunk, cause you problems there. So this is an excellent opportunity to work on cleaning those out. This one looks pretty good. That one over there was completely jammed up. We'll see what we can do to clean that up. So here's our new top. I got it from Robbins Auto Top, which is, if you're doing tops for Miatas, this is one of the names of quality. And I actually bought one of the good ones that has real glass. It's actual canvas. Basically like top tier one. It was not cheap. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and take it out and kind of spread it out, because the canvas is going to need to try to warm up and stretch. And I also want to see if it did come with the rain rail, if I remember that right, or what I need to do here, because I noticed there's this sealant right along here, and I don't want to wreck all that if I don't need to, right? So let's open this guy up and take a look. So that answers that question. I did get a new rain rail, so I need to take the old one out. And you may notice there's a difference in the material here, because this is actual canvas and the old one was like a pleather, right? It was a polyvinyl top, so it was a cheaper top. And the fact that I've seen all the missing hardware tells me that either it was taken to a low quality shop or somebody did it at home. This got all sorts of fun goodies built into it, and it came with even more goodies and an actual set of instructions. So check that out. As I am tidying up here, I found that the rain rail has a retainer, like a push pin. Pop that out. That actually loosens this entire piece. So that's the push pin, and it's broken on the other side. So, oh well, there that went. Put that over there. So now I can keep working on getting the rain rail out. Make a quick note here. There's a plastic tray that sits right here. Looks like this. And I popped it out on each side. Now notice this tray, it sits and it engages the top of the rain drain. That's what this tube is. And it's held in with a retainer right there. And I think that's it, at least at the bottom, once you take off that little cap that goes here. And I took that out because I suspected that some of my missing hardware, some of those missing nuts that go on here, would be down here. And sure enough, they were. I found 2 of them over here, 1 on the other side, and it was filthy in here, just jam, leaves, and dirt. So if you're doing kind of restoration work on something that maybe sat and nobody cared for it for a while, you probably want to take these up and clean in here. So quick pro tip, if you've pulled this plastic tray and then you're trying to put the tube back in, this tube is it's a friction hole. So you can pop the tube out and then you can look and see exactly how the tray was sitting in there. This is also good if you want to just go ahead and take a look. Make sure that your rain drain's clear. This one is. I actually bore scoped it. So that way you can push everything back in, you can clean up everything, and then you run some water through it and test it. And then you're done with all this and you can actually get back to working on your top. Good morning, everyone. Today is a new day. So I've laid it out, as you can see, and gone ahead. I'm starting to take the weather stripping off. This piece just kind of slides off. As you can see, it fits in a channel. This piece, you're not going to get it fully off because it is held in with a screw. You got to take it off. And then on this end, there are 2 push pins, 1 and 2, that you got to pop out before you can get this piece off. But we're going to do that, and after we do that, as you can see from the last guy who was in here, we need to take basically the trim rails for the weather stripping off. And once we do that, we'll actually be near the layer to take off the top that's tucked in over here. So that's what's next. After you get it done on this side, don't forget to do it on the other side. So one thing I want to note as I'm going along this process is, number 1, I'm putting my screws back in their holes so I don't lose them. And number 2, when you look at this weather stripping trim, the taller side that has the notches on it, at least the last guy who did this, that side is facing towards the inside of the top, not the outside. So just something to keep in mind when you go to put this back in. I'm pretty comfortable that they probably set this up in such a way that you can't put it in backwards, but just in case. The other thing I wanted to point out is, after you get all these rails off, there's this end cap that needs to come off, and there's another Phillips head, and then this cap will slide off, which it does need to come off. So this is what I wind up with basically on each side. I've laid the parts out as they are on the frame, how I pulled them off, and for reference, I have the back facing forward relative to me. You can see the window there. The front of the top is near my feet. So I've got the parts relative to that. You see there's that little clip I was talking about that is mounted right here. I put it screwed back. Now you're going to notice in a couple of spots you will need to peel the top back if you're going to put the screws back in, so you don't accidentally hold the top in, right? And I did notice on this side I had 2 screws instead of 1. I'm assuming that the guy before me, whenever they worked, they lost hardware, and that's why I was missing one. I'll probably try to replace that. Any case, our next step here is we need to take the band out across the front. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 screws that need to come out. Then this metal band comes off, and then under that you can see it here, there's the top, and we need to peel that back. Now you'll notice as I peel this, it's a bit kind of sticky, and that's because what you're supposed to do when you put this back on is put some adhesive down. And based on the yellowy residue I'm seeing, whoever did this probably did some fabric spray adhesive. That's how they chose to do it, which is not how you're supposed to do it, but that's what they chose to do. So anyway, you're going to have to kind of peel it back and get it off the corners and everything. But once you do that, the top should be pretty much off, except for the bows that are they're in the middle here. So the bows are going to be these metal bars that go across, and I think they're all Velcro, but that's our next step, is we got to get those out of the way. I had laid, you know, those reinforcements that had the 13 nuts on them. That's what these are. And I hit them with a rust locker after I got the extra rust off, so they should be good for another 20 years or so, hopefully. Let me get that out of the way, and we'll move on to that next step, and then we'll be pretty much ready. So I was wrong on this. It was held in with adhesive, not Velcro. And then it's actually held into a groove in the channel to get the other side of it out. So as you can see, if you just push it right, it'll pop right out. Except for apparently right where I put the camera. That little part does not want to come out. But it comes out, and then that's how we get this out of the groove. That's right, it slides out. Forgot. So slide that out, and that's how you get that done. And there are 3 of those, so you'll repeat that process 3 times. Then we move on to the last steps to remove the old top from the frame. This guy here, I just decided to take a blade to, that this was so much faster than trying to pop the glue out. And then I can just slide this stuff out, what's left. And this guy here is Velcro. So just kind of get that out of there, and we'll be done with the boat. All right, see that little silver guy right there? It's called a rivet. And there are 4 of them, 2 on either side of the back of the frame near the window, that we're going to need to drill through in order to finish getting the top free. So this should have come in the instructions with your new top, but we're going to try to use a 1/8 drill bit. I have some metal cutting bits. Probably your standard multi-function bit would work too. I mean, it's a rivet. It's hopefully not of a real hard steel. But if you've never worked a rivet before or drilled one out, what you got to do is get in the center of it and then drill in and drill the center out. And once the center is drilled out, you should be able to separate the rivet. Except for in this case, I don't think they use the right size rivet because that is spinning and it should not be spinning. So let me get something to lock down the backside. Oh boy, we have to get vice grips on this. Yep, gonna need some vice grips, but you get the point. You see how we've got metal coming out? I'm most of the way through it. I just can't hold on to it. I'm about to say, nope, you don't get my drill bit. You don't get to snap it. If you get it cored enough, what you can also do is get a nice set of wire cutters, and if you drilled out the core, you can just snip through it. Anyway, I will bring you back when I get through these. So at this point, if you've been following along, you should. Oh, I did forget one thing. There is a tension cable that we need to remove that I completely and totally forgot about. So if you look here, here's the cable, and it looks like this one's a non-standard cable. This is not what you would have gotten if it's the original, so somebody replaced it. But this is a piece of it, and it actually runs along the top, is how it works. But it comes up right here, and it actually connects into, there's a screw and a spring. So what we need to do to fully separate everything is take our screw out. So that loosens up the spring, and then we can get the cable off the spring. The spring and the screw need to stay with the frame. The cable can stay with your old top. Normally you should try to transfer it if it's in decent shape, but it's highly recommended just to buy new ones, which is what I did, and they're not that expensive. One thing to definitely take note of is the hole where this is supposed to leave going through the top and then into the frame. It has to come in through here, so make a note of that. All right, so now that we've got the tension cables off, if you've done followed everything else the way I've laid it out, you should be able to pick your frame up, get it out of the way, and then you can get your old top out of the way and prep the area for your new one. So congratulations, you've gotten it out, you've gotten it disassembled, and now comes the next tricky part, which is putting the top back on correctly. Good afternoon, everyone. Today is a new day. So hopefully today will be the day that we finish up the Miata top. And if you celebrate Christmas, a Merry Christmas to you, for today is December 25th. If you don't, season's greetings. All right, so our next step here, now that we've got our top completely cleared out, is we need to install basically some protective caps called bow caps. And they're going to go on, or bow, sorry. They're going to go on bow number 2. So what is bow number 2? If you count the very front, the part that latches, is the first bow, and a bow being the metal support that goes across a headliner on an old school car. This is bow number 1. This is bow number 2. This is bow number 3. and this is bow number 4. Okay. Now, if you look at bow number 4, that ends in a bolt. Not very interesting. Look at bow number 3, it just kind of doesn't end in a point or anything. It's just like a cut off tube. Again, not very interesting. But look at bow number 2. It ends in this pinched tube that actually has fairly sharp edges. And if you're using a Robbins top, particularly I think if you're using the glass one, you need to cover this or you'll tear the top. And to that note, you are given in the Robbins kit 2 plastic covers that you need to insert at either end of this bow. So that's what we're going to do now. So best I can tell, and the picture and the directions is horrible, it doesn't really matter which way you install this, but what you will probably need to do is kind of bend the frame around, give yourself some real estate, and then you can try to slide this guy on. Okay, so that answers that question. It can't go that way because you're going to hit stuff, so your tail has to be facing the top. That's how that's going to go. And then the tail is there to give you something to pull on so you can get this seated correctly. Let's see here. Yeah, I'd say I got that on. All right. So that's how you do one side, and then just go do it on the other side, and then we're done with this step. All right. So just kind of give you an idea of how the frame is currently oriented for our next step. And let's do that. Okay, this next step only applies to you if you have purchased a glass top. If you have purchased a vinyl plastic window top for a NA Miata, ignore this, go past this point in the video, and we'll pick it back up once we're done. But if you did purchase a glass top, we got a little bit of drilling to do. So we need to drill into bows 3 and 4. So as a reminder, going from this one, this is bow number 1, 2, 3, and then 4 is the one that can swing around a lot. Now, we need to drill, basically we need to drill holes for our support bows, our support straps that we need because the glass is heavier. And unfortunately my camera is not behaving, but starting from here, we need to drill 3/16 over, go over 3/16, make a hole roughly in the middle of that. The hole will go through this channel and it will go through the top of the tube, but it does not need to go all the way through the tube. Just the channel, top of tube, and it needs to be roughly in the same plane as these existing holes. So you're going to want it somewhere along where my finger is as the camera keeps, getting fuzzy on you. So we need to basically mark 3/16 off edge. I have a tape measure to do that. I'm going to assume that you can read a tape measure that's in SAE. If not, I'll try to help you out. Okay, if you remember fractions from 4th grade, 5th grade, then you'll know that 3/16 is just a little bit less than 1/4. Okay? Now, on my tape measure, it's actually fairly fancy, and it points out 1/4. And then you see that little tiny mark right there? That's going to be 3/16. So we don't need to go in that deep. And the best way to go about this is going to be, we flip this upside down, pull our tape measure in, and we take a look. So 1/4's right there, right? So it's going to be about like that. And I will double check that, but I'll double check the instructions, but that would be 3/16. It's not very far in. Okay, now that we have this, instructions call out for a second hole right across. For the other hole for the strap, it's going to be, in my instructions, it calls out for 1/2 inch on center, meaning from the center of this hole to the center of your other hole, it should be 1/2 inch of distance. And then repeat the process you just did, drill out that hole. Once you finish on this side, go do it on the other side of bow number 3, and then you got to do all this again for bow number 4. So total of 8 holes. All right, folks, it is time for those rivets, or pop rivets. These guys. If you've never worked with them before, well, I envy you. They're quite annoying to remove, but they're a cheap way to fasten two things together when you don't feel like you're going to need to separate them anytime soon. They can, we drilled some out earlier. So that's what it looks like before it's deployed, and this is the tool you're going to need. This is one I bought at Lowe's years ago, and I just now have gotten around to using it. You will need the 5/32 head. You load it like so. If you've got the handle thing free, it'll load. Just did this, but it should wind up sitting flush when you load it. And we're going to use this to go ahead and put our support straps in. So ultimately, your layout between bows 3 and 4, this is 3, this is 4 respectively, is going to be like this. This is, because I'm referencing a video myself, and this is a little different than in older versions of this kit. Older versions of the kit would have you drill, I think on bow number 4, have you drill out basically right around, just off camera there, about 4 inches off to the side for this long strap, which is going to go onto a rain rail stud. But they changed it, so now it's all one combined strap. So all we need to do is make our 8 holes and then go about this. So if you've never used a pot rivet before, like, hey, that's like me, you're going to take it. It needs to seat all the way, like so. And then you pump. You pump until you're supposed to hear it click. Like that. Once you hear it click, the rivet is set, and then this metal pole is trash. You throw that away. So, as you can see, this one is now set. I will proceed to do the remaining 3 on this side, and then we're done. And then we repeat this process over on the other side. And once we have our reinforcement straps in, we can proceed with actually beginning to put the new top on the frame, which to me is pretty exciting. All right, so pro tip. It occurs to me, I better not actually do what I'm about to do. So I need to look at how the new top actually lays the fabric into these channels. Because it occurs to me that if you do this right, and you rivet the channel piece into the actual tube of the bow, which is what you're supposed to do, and 2 of these did not do that because the channel piece was too springy, you're not going to be able to slide fabric into the channel, which is kind of what you're supposed to do. So I'm going to hold off on doing it on this side, but one thing I will note is when you go to do it, you're going to need to take pliers and bend this down as flush as you can to the bow tube so that when your rivet goes in, it actually goes all the way through and then seats, right? So on this side, all 4 went through the channel. That's fine. But on each one, only the inner actually went into the bow tube, which I think will be fine. I think we will be okay. Particularly because I'm going to fix it on this side so that doesn't repeat itself. But something to keep in mind as you're doing this. All right, so after you finish with all the riveting stuff, and what I found out is because of this particular step, you don't need the channel retainer anymore on bow number 4 or bow number 4 or bow number 3. So you can go ahead and compress that down and then put your rivets in. So this is how this works. You have, you call it a listing, but you've got this cloth, right? And you need to pull it over. I'll push this back so you can see. So here's bow number 4, here's bow number 3, here's bow number 2, okay? So here's what you gotta do. You gotta take the cloth, pull it across bow number 4, pull it across bow number 3, and then you need to get it to line up and grab onto this Velcro that is hanging out at around bow number 2. So you see how I've covered up the Velcro, but this plastic lip remains. So then you take this, and I know you guys can't see the full, so I will back you out. There you go. And we're gonna feed it under bow number 2, like so. Okay, and then start over here so you guys can see it. We have our channel retainer, and this should tuck into it. I may have to fiddle fart with it. It may have gotten bent from all the misadventures here, but this is how this is supposed to work. Oh, so it go all the way back there. Yeah, this was really meant to kind of slide in, not push in. Oh boy. I'm going to be fighting with this for a bit, but if you take a look, I'll bring you down to look at the side here. If you look at the actual shape of our retainer there, so you can see we got to shove our plastic up into that is what needs to happen. So you may need to get like a fork or a spudger or something to help you push without damaging the fabric. All right, when you are done, it should look a little something like this. This is not perfect, but I'm not allowing perfect to become the enemy of good enough. Sometimes as you're pushing, it'll kind of make a clicking sound. Sometimes it will, sometimes it won't. But what I kind of went by is, do I see that plastic edge shoved up pretty high up into the channel, retaining channel in the bow? That's what I went by. So, all right, let's move on. Good afternoon, everybody. Today is a new day. So for the cable that runs to that spring, right, the other end of it goes here in the frame. It is riveted in, and the rivet came in from the inside of the frame where my finger is. And if you are transferring, or if you're installing a new cable wire, you know, one end is this, it's the spring here. And I'm gonna need to take that loose. Don't lose your run through the, I need to grab it and flip it around, but where you had to pull the wire through the top. Don't lose that, but you're gonna need to put the other end of that cable, it's gonna have to go here, there's a little plastic piece which I had in my hand and I have now lost. I will find it again. But this is the one that goes on the other side. That goes on the inside of the frame like this. And then you need to run the right rivet. And there were some rivets included for that. I think it's these. It may not be. I'll have to check the size. But the point is, if you look at the build sheet for the Robbins top, it does include 2 rivets for taking care of that. So anyway, just wanted to let you guys know that because I wasn't aware of it. I freaked out a little bit and I had to go through 6-7 videos before I found a video that actually showed that location. Pro tip, if you, like me, wind up misusing one of your 2 longer 5/32 rivets, what you can do is you can move down to a 1/8 rivet, which would be the equivalent of a 4/32. It'll work, but what you will need to do is buy these things called backup plates, and you put them on the back side of your rivet. As you can see, if the camera would behave, there we go. And they do work, so it's centered up, it's tight, even though it's too small for the hole at 1/8. So I did that, and I bought a variety pack here so that I was able to just use one of these really ridiculously long rivets to make everything work. It's all working now. Yay. If I need to trim the end of this guy, I will. I'm going to move the frame to its range, make sure that's okay. But with that, I finally got my new cables on, and I'll feed them through and I'll reattach them where they're supposed to go on the frame with the spring, and I can finally keep moving forward. All right, our next step gets kind of exciting because now we're actually really starting to pull the top back on. You're going to come here to this section that is near the back, and as you can see, it's got this hard, I guess it's a vinyl piece, but that is stitched in on top of fabric, and that needs to line up with our 3 weather stripping screw holes, which is going to be 1, 2, and 3. And then more importantly, for the next few steps, we have 2 pop rivets that we're going to line up, 1 and 2. So get that lined up here. You also need to fold over this piece up top. It's going to have 3 holes pre-cut in it. The one in the middle is for our screw head, and then we're going to have 2 of our trim push pins that go here and here. But you want to get this metal bracket over it first. Later model years had this actual curled bracket. The early ones apparently did not have this, like 1990, 91, 92. And if you're installing this top, the Robbins instructions do say get this piece. I imagine you can order it somewhere. So do this on this side, do it on the other side, and then we'll be ready to get everything kind of lined up and pop rivet. Be aware, this is a fabric, right? So you may have to stretch it and pull it to get things to line up. Alrighty, let's get these riveted in. Got 2 layers of material and then the actual metal frame itself. I'm gonna hold that down. Should we get this thing fully seated? There, that's a successful plant. Come up here. Get that pushed through, get that pushed in. There we go. This is supposed to be a one-handed rivet gun, but what I'm finding is really it's going to be 100% one-handed. I need bigger hands. Anyway, that is how that's gonna look, and then we're gonna repeat that on the other side. And then we've got, it's probably off camera, we've got some more pieces we gotta tack in the back over here. Okay, so we need to rivet in this. There are, I don't know how you can see it, but there's a hole here and a hole there. Lines up with a hole that goes right where my finger is. And then another hole up here. These are still gonna be the 5/32 rivets that you've been working with so far. In fact, that's the vast majority of what you got going on here. I'm gonna go after, oh man, that does not want to go. Come on, there it goes. Go after this guy here first. Yeah, that'll bring it around. May have to stretch that one a bit. One-handed gun, they said. It'll be easy, they said. Maybe I'm just weak. Maybe that's what's going on. All right, so there's that one. And there we go. Yeah, we're gonna have to stretch this guy a bit to make him go in. There we go. Don't know if I just bent my rivet or not, but there, we got it going in. So we'll get this guy in. Now, as you can see, my top, see, can you still see? I think I just bumped the camera. Yeah. My top has a built-in rain rail, so rain rail is not a problem. But if you are transferring a rain rail, you're going to have some additional steps and some additional riveting. All right. So there is that. That is now attached. I dig it. And then you go do it on the other side. Okay, two things here, guys. One is, do be careful when you're trying to adjust the top. I made a grab for something, I wasn't paying attention, and I tore this. I don't think it's going to hurt anything ultimately. I don't think it's going to affect, weather sealing or whatnot, but I just tore a brand new $1,000 top. So that is frustrating, to say the least. So next thing we're going to tackle, zoom out here, is we're going to start putting our weather stripping metal trim back on. So we're going to start up here first, and you'll notice we got some goop right here, right? It's because the factory, in order for weather sealing, they put a glue here. And Robbins, for this top, also includes one extra piece of fabric here you got to put in to hold things in. And what we're going to need to do is, before we attach this fabric and then put the metal rail on top, we need to put some goop here. And the goop in question is going to be 3M weather strip adhesive. It is, I guess, chemical number 03602. It is thick, but it's what the job calls for. So what we're going to do, let's see if I got to pop this open. Yeah, it looks like we do. So we're going to get that open. Oh yeah, she's thick. And we're gonna lay down a nice thick bead along there. And then we're gonna hurry, because apparently this stuff is on the move. I'm trying to put my cap on upside down, and that's why it doesn't want to do anything. So we're gonna get that in place like so. And then we're gonna get our rail in place on top of that. Remember, the tall side is the one that's gonna need to be facing inward. And go ahead, get a screw in there, get that started. I completely just kind of yellowed this. I did not look to see what kind of a dry time our adhesive has or anything like that. So I'm just gonna get this tacked in real quick, and then I'm gonna look that up. Should be on the product card. But we need to do that on either side. We need to install our trim, and then we're gonna have to do a similar thing up front. Make sure you get your top adjusted, but when we go to the front, we got to pull it up. We got to get all of that ready, because we're gonna have to lay down a real big long bead of this goop. And I bought 2 tubes of goop. It's not that expensive at Walmart. You definitely want to get it at Walmart, because if you go to your local parts store, it's going to cost you about 15 bucks a tube. Okay, so our final challenge here, after you've reinstalled all your weather stripping trim and you glued this down the best you could, is we have to reinstall the front bow, basically. But to do that, we have to be able, as you can see, I'll move the camera a little bit, we have to be able to get this band to line up with the screw holes underneath it. And the extra challenge here, as you can see, is there was adhesive all along this metal lip. So we have to put that back and get these screws back in. If you remember, there's a metal plate that goes over this, and we got to get that all lined up. But one thing that's really important, that as we do that, is we got to get this pulled far enough forward to where it wants to fold over, and we want to glue all of this down. So you may want to save this for last, but get this glued down, and then to make sure it stays glued down, you probably want to go get a C-clamp or some kind of a clamp and clamp this until the adhesive dries. We're going to keep using our weather strip adhesive, and let's see, it's probably drying pretty slow for me because it's winter, not real warm outside. But that's what we need to do next. And after that, we get to put on rubbery bits and then put it back on the car. So I'm gonna lay a layer of goo right along basically where this outermost channel is. And you may wind up needing 2 tubes of goo for this. I bought 2 just in case. And I'm only tackling right along the bow first. And then I'll tackle those corners as I mentioned. And while I do think this stuff dries fairly quickly, it even says in the instructions you're supposed to let it tack up and then bond the materials. So if it takes you a minute to get all your goo in place, get all your stuff in place and ready, then not a big deal. Okay, it basically took me one 1-ounce tube to goo all of this and goo the under the rails. See if I can get you guys a little bit better view here. There we go. All right. So now, gonna get my screwdriver ready and my screws ready, and we're gonna tackle this at 3 points, and then we'll start filling in everything else as we go. And once everything is good and in, we should be able to let the goo just start setting up and doing its thing. Oh, one other thing, make sure you don't have any materials in the way. And let's try to get this going on. As you can see, I'm having to struggle a little bit here. Okay, I got that one. But my problem is that my little plastic inserts are worn. So my insert popped out. I'm gonna have to get a little bit creative. I may have to go run and grab a clamp, because this does not want to behave. So I got that one. Let's see if I can get this guy in the middle here. Yeah, this is going to get interesting because all of my little plastic tabs are just coming out. Not anticipating this being an issue, but here we are. Let's see here. Was not anticipating that to be a problem either. But again, here we are. Anyway, this is going to be a fight. Catch you another. So, got into my second tube here. What I am doing is just kind of laying a good bead here. I mean, it says put it down thin, but I really don't want to mess with this ever again. So we're gonna get that to go down, and you'll see it is fighting me. And then I have my secret weapon here. These are supposed to be brake hose pliers. But as long as you don't clamp them too tight to where they try to go sideways on you, you can do stuff like that. And meanwhile, you can come over here, kind of get working on that. That's going to be too tight, so we'll back it off a little bit. There we go. And what I wound up having to do for my little plastic inserts that wouldn't stick is I had to take pressure off them. And how I did it, I got some woodworking clamps that I have, and I clamped those in, and I put a dollop of this adhesive sealer where I clamped in like that. And this probably is going to be where I stop for the day to let all this set up and cure and do whatever else I need it to do. And then tomorrow I will move on to actually reinstalling the top. So this is your opportunity. If if you feel your top's a little bit cattywampus or something like that, something's not lining up right, and you'll know when you go to pull the front on. Like I noticed the right side, which, yeah, that'll be the passenger side, didn't feel like it was quite right. Like it was just like a millimeter off, so I had to tug on it a little more to get it where I wanted it. But this is your chance to get all that straightened out. I mean, if you've lined everything up to this point, it shouldn't be that far off at all. And after this, it's put on the weather stripping, which you won't be able to do the stuff up in the corner yet because you got to get all the clamps out of the way first, but you could put the other pieces on. And tomorrow, we will go through trying to get this guy back on the Miata and get the rain rail reinstalled on its studs and get everything bolted back in and see if we can't get it closed. See you guys tomorrow. Okay, I'm going to show you some secret sauce on how you have to get these weather seals back in. So this is kind of a guide rail, this tall one. But where you're going to have to fight is the shorter one. So if we look, this weather stripping is going to sit like this, roughly, right? So if you take a close look, this short channel here on this side is going to line up with this shorter channel here. And you have to get this lip that my thumb is on, you have to get it tucked in under this metal lip. And it's not going to want to go willingly, so you're probably going to need like a small flathead. I've been using this because I already had it out. And you got to get it shoved in there to get it to seat. And then you may need to wiggle it up and down a little bit to get it positioned just right. And then up here, you have 2 screws to help get the piece seated appropriately. And it's the piece in the back that has the 2 push pins. That's what I was getting confused because I have not had enough caffeine this morning. But just throwing that out there, because I was getting really frustrated until I actually sat down and looked at the problem on how you need to get these in. So you can see I've got 2 of them in so far over there. If you're trying to do a bit of confidence boosting, just tackle the middle one first. It's not that hard because it's short. And then go after the longer, more complex pieces. All right, I'm gonna wrap this up so that we can finally get this thing back on the vehicle. All right, so I know you're really excited to put your top back on the car, but there's one more thing we need to do before we start that process. What you see in front of you is a side view of the stud sealing kit in the order of operations where you need to put the seals in order to keep moisture from getting in. Now, you may have noticed earlier in the video, I said I had to do some work on my rain rail retainers because they were rusted. And the reason why is the last guy who did this did not put these in. I found a few of them, but most of them were gone. So if you look here, this is the wall of your car. So the very first thing that goes on for anything else is one of these foam stud seals. And I've read folks of using like a rubber washer or something to the same effect, but this is what Robbins gives you. So one of those has got to go in first. Then basically you need to correctly install your rain rail and top. In my case, it is the rain rail is attached to the top, so I just need to make sure that's folded up and put in. Then you put another seal, and then this little thin thing is actually the metal retainer bar. So it's seal, essentially it is seal, rain rail, seal, retainer bar, nut. So before we start putting everything in, let's go ahead and throw a seal on. Then bring the top in. All right, so that's kind of how we look with the beginning of our stud seals, rain rail seals, whatever you want to call them. But before we go any further, let's also talk about a few other things. Remember these straps? You should only have these if you're following this with a glass top. Well, if you've got a zippered glass top, there'll be a cute little pocket this goes in, but we do not. So this is just going to go back, and it's going to sit on one of those studs, and it's going to need to go in after the rain rail, right? We want this on the inside of our weather seal. We don't want it on the outside. I don't think you could make it go on the outside anyway, because this is all inside the top. But if you do have that, if you take a look here, we have a specific place this needs to go. And for a NA Miata, which is what I have here, we want stud number 11 on the passenger side and stud number 3 on the driver's side. So if we go back to this diagram here, our layout for stud number 3 and stud number 11 is going to be our seal, our rain rail, and then a seal, and then I would say after the seal should be the strap, because we want our weather sealing to be on either side of our main weather barrier, which is the rain rail, right? So I would put our strap after that, but before our metal bracketry is how I'm gonna do it. So just kind of throwing that out there. You may need to take a drill and widen out this hole a bit. Not sure. I may have to do that just to make sure it'll slip on easily versus it being a fight. So besides that, we also need to talk about this guy real quick. He goes on, you can't see it right now because the top is in the forward position, but if you remember, this clip has a piece of metal with a hole punched in it, and all of that is sitting over where a push pin goes. And one of these has all my push pins in it. Not that one. Anyway, one of these has my push pins, and we need to take a push pin and shove it back in there. And that's probably one of the first things that we want to do before we start working on any other part of the rain rail. And there's one on each side of the vehicle. I think what I'm going to do is, like the video that I'm following, we're going to bring the top back a bit, and then the hinge mechanics will expose this from the front, and we can take care of that. Also, don't forget to do the push pin. And again, hard to see at the moment, but the push pin that allows us to, actually you can see it better from this direction. Yeah, don't forget this guy over here. Get this push pin back in to help hold our rain rail thing in place so that the water will drain correctly. So make sure you take care of that. Take care of these corner guys first. Remember the order for your support straps. And then we just got to start trying to push these on in the appropriate place. And then we put our seal on the other side once it's pushed on. And understand that this is brand new fabric. And if you're doing this in the summer, probably won't be so bad. But if you're doing this in the winter, like I am, this fabric's going to need to stretch. So be fully prepared that you're going to need to fold this up a bit, kind of lean things back so that you can get the room you need here in the back to do what you got to do. And be fully prepared that when you're all said and done, this is not going to want to close, and we're going to have to deal with that when we get there. Okay, so what I've done temporarily is I've just put some of the nuts on just to kind of tack this into place so I can get a feel for how it's supposed to look and everything. Like I'm kind of not digging the pooch here, but I have this installed correctly. But that's just, I guess, how this is supposed to be. Which, not a huge fan of that. You know what probably was supposed to be? Well, no, it definitely looped over. I'm not sure why. Yeah, anyway, I can pin that up with something, some Velcro or whatever. But this is how we look with it kind of tacked in. I don't have the other seals in. I don't have, you know, our support straps in. So that's the stuff I'm going to start working on. So what my plan here is, where that big center bar goes, I'm going to go ahead and put nuts on everything. And then that hopefully will take enough of the tension that I can come over to the sides, get those in, and then come back and work the center again. And we'll see. There we go. That's starting to make me feel better. We'll see what we can do here. And what I'm talking about is, initially when I was looking at this, it looked like the top was actually sticking out too far. And what was going on was that this bow right here is bow number 4 is not as far back as it needs to be. So I'm actually going to probably move that back by hand, push that back to where it's supposed to go. And when you do that, it tightens up the back here, and it's making it so the top does not want to close, which is normal. That's what we should expect to see. And the weather stripping is looking pretty good. So anyway, I'll keep chewing on this. All right, give you guys a little progress update. So I've gotten that one in correctly with all the retainers and everything and the seals. And I've got my strap installed. So I had to bore this out with a drill. Wound up having to use a 7/32 to get it large enough to fit over the stud without issue. So there is that to think about. And this is all loose again. I don't know why, but sure. There is documentation that says to tighten these up in a certain order. So my recommendation to you is get everything together, get everything on, but when you go to do your final tightening to actually make everything snug, follow this order. That's what I'm going to do. But as far as getting things on finger tight, I'm doing it in whatever order I think I can get away with to try to get all this stuff on. Because getting this center in is going to be rough. Because not only do you have to worry about your seals, but you'll notice the metal here. You've got to get it just right so the pieces will actually sit in next to each other. And I have a bend on this side from the last guy who did this, and I don't know if he did that because he had to cheat or if he did that on accident or what. But that's what I'm doing, taking it slow, kind of seeing how things are coming together. I am seeing that, you know, the top now is getting pretty tight. And you'll notice that when I try to close it all the way, this strap's starting to take tension, right? So as you go to put your top in, one thing that's really important, and you're going to have to do this before, as you can see, before you install particularly your center rain rail beam, is you got to make sure that the rain rail rubber is behind the lip on this seal. And if you just shove it in there, it's not gonna be. It's gonna be in front of it. So I got this thing entirely together, and I thought I was done, and then I was checking a few things and I realized, oop, this is probably not right. And I was correct. On the sides, you can use some tools, kind of just get your fingers in there and fix it. But for this center section, basically below the window, you got to get your hands in there and you'll feel it push past the seal. And you'll know you have it. It's very important that you do this. Otherwise, it will absolutely 100% leak. So don't be like me and cry sad tears because I got to put this bar back in and then redo all my carpet. But the good news is if you've got everything installed already, like I was able to leave my sidebars in place. I only had to drop the center. And then it's not hard to do. It takes 15 seconds. Just don't forget to do it. You will have leaks. All right, here's what I wound up having to do to make all this fit. First things first, you got to get the center rail in. It helps if you get the side rails in so that their foam seals won't fall off. But really the center rail has to go in first. You got to do something to support the weight of the glass. I use a jack stand, right? You know, hopefully I didn't scratch the glass. It doesn't look like I have. No jagged edges there. But you got to do something, right? You want to start with your center so that, and get it mostly lined up so all the foams will hold. Then you come in with your side pieces, jam them in there however you can so that they're sitting flush. And then you just start going around and putting your nuts in. And now I'm going to follow this tightening sequence. So hopefully that will help me get this snugged up proper and everything seated. And at that point, we are actually done with the top installation. But we still got to put the rest of the car together, and we still got to deal with getting it to close. Well, if these bolts are so tight that the top of the channel is closed and water cannot come in, it can't go in the channel. If it can't go in the channel, it will go somewhere, and that somewhere generally is it finds a way into your trunk, is generally what happens. So the ultimate torque for these is, it's effectively around 9 foot-pounds. It's technically, I want to say 96 inch-pounds, so maybe 8 foot-pounds. Point is, your final torque is not very high. This is kind of like doing oil pan bolts or something like that. You're gonna do it in a couple of waves. All right, everything's on. And what I found really interesting is once you go through the torque sequence and you get everything tight, you actually wind up getting good gap between your rain rail brace bars or whatever they're called. So we do a quick test here, and we fold her down. Folds down fine. This is a good thing. And if we, and that's, you can see this is popping out. I'm not happy with that, but there's not much I can do about it. And if we pull it back out, yeah, looks good. Again, not happy about that, but I found it worse than that, and the top was still closing. So anyway, the top installation is officially complete at this point. The last thing that you need to worry about is your top, actually getting it to latch, because that's the next and really the final thing you need to do is get this to latch. And to do that, I may need to get some helpers. I may have my kids sit on either side, and then I'm going to push down from the top and see if they can get it to latch up. But that's basically what you got to do. Either you get some buddies to help you push it down so you can get it to latch, or what I've also seen people do is they'll take a ratchet strap from some point in the vehicle up to a brace bar, right, a bow or something, and pull it down until you get to the point where you can latch.
It's officially installed.
All right, so I used a ratchet strap on the steering wheel, and I hooked one in on bow number 2, and I was able to pull it in tight to get it to latch. And after that, I was able to, by hand, bring this in. I'm guessing that the material, it's fairly warm today. I think it's probably around 75. And it's been sitting out for a week at this point because it's taken me forever to get this done. So I'm guessing it already stretched a little bit. But I've adjusted both latches actually to minimum length. And we're looking pretty good. We're not quite even, at least best I can tell. But we're sitting nice and good on our seal here. And I'm gonna let this stay latched for a couple of days. Let it stretch out, and I'll keep it in my pole barn for a couple of days, let it stay stretched out. But then I have to do the test, right? I gotta actually see, because what's curious there is this side appears to be sitting higher. I may need to mess with this latch a bit. Yeah, it needs to be kind of down like that. But now that that one's latched, I can do that. But I'll dink with this a little bit, but more or less we are done. So I don't know if you feel brave enough to do the car wash test, but when you get out in some weather, things to keep an eye on is make sure that after you go through a good rain or something like that, check your trunk and see if you have any water puddling in the trunk. If it's puddling up in this area, might be your rain rail. Might be you didn't quite get that right. It could also be that the seals under your Franken bolts are bad and you need to replace that, which I think mine are torched because I've got a tiny leak here and I think it's that. But we'll see because I haven't been out in the rain since I put the new top on. Look on the interior, see if you get any leaks there. You know, just keep an eye on stuff, right? Take her for a drive, see if you have unacceptable wind noise along here. If you do, it's most likely that, again, these seals are not right, or that this isn't seating as firm as you need it to, so wind is getting in under here. So just take her for a shakedown cruise, see what you get. You may have to do some tweaking and some tuning, but otherwise, congratulations, you have gotten this done. And give yourself a pat on the back, have a beer, because this was not easy. And that's with me wrenching on stuff in earnest for about 4 or 5 years now. This is probably a 7 or an 8 out of 10 for difficulty because it just was so fiddly and everything has to be right. Or at the end of the day, it doesn't work. All right, folks, that's going to do it for this particular video where we successfully changed out, you can see it there behind me, the soft top on my 1995 Mazda Miata MX-5 of the NA generation. If you found this video interesting, if you found it entertaining, please consider sharing, or subscribing. That does help me to grow the channel, which allows me to bring you more projects like this. Please also leave a comment. I like to read them, I like to reply to them, and I like to learn from them. And lastly, guys, as you've seen in this video, I do make mistakes and I do keep them on film so you guys can learn from them. See you guys next time.